Do you still need power there, or
No,
you're
we're
okay?
doing the thing. Look,
Okay,
we're live right
we're
now.
live. We're live right now. LinkedIn, what's up? From TalentNet Live, Austin, 2024, powered by Yeti.
We're loving all of that.
That's right. Jackie Clayton and John Baldino, but first coffee.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
You can try. We were trying to dance to do the thing.
I mean, how are you sitting down for this song?
You've been sitting down all
Oh my
day.
God,
Look,
thank
Sarah's
you.
up! Sarah's up! Everybody stand up.
And,
You don't have to do anything besides stand up. I love it. Stretch. Right? That's right.
Some of y'all were making out to this song, and it's like a little traumatic for you to hear that. Sorry, apologies for that. John Baldino,
I'm Jackie Clayton.
welcome to But First Coffee. We are live right now, so let's hear it for everybody. We are live.
We do need a little bit of help. Go on LinkedIn. People are in the chat. We can't see it. So if you see anything interesting, let us know. If it's not interesting, skip it.
Yes.
Just skip the whole thing.
Before we get started, or actually as we get started, I want to be sure to say Happy International Women's Day today. If you didn't know that has not been mentioned yet. AI hasn't informed us, I guess, but we are celebrating women today. So thank you all for your contribution.
Also, if you've ever watched, has anybody ever seen But First Coffee before? Yeah. Have you heard me talk about my executive producer? He's right there, running from me, hiding. That is, my executive producer is here, and so we're really glad. And, you know, the topic, what we wanted to talk about, we've been enjoying everything that we've seen so far, and we've got some news.
Here's where we are, everybody. 75% of people are coming to work sick on purpose. I don't know if you saw that survey come out this week. 75%. Forget this COVID stuff and how it's changed us. We're coming to work sick with presenting symptoms. We're terrified to take a day off. My question is, how does that come up in the recruiting process? What are we telling people to make them know that they should be terrified to take a day off?
They shouldn't be terrified. They shouldn't be terrified. I think what we need to talk about is we're doing a lot for talent acquisition. We talk about tools. We talk about all those things. We're trying to change the things we can control, but we're not talking enough about what's going on internally at our organizations and what's happening with our hiring managers. What's the persona that we need to recruit for? Because, you know, you might be recruiting the wrong person. I personally, I get really frustrated. I hear a lot. We always say we don't want to make a culture fit. We want a culture add. There's a certain amount of culture that you have to fit. It has to fit. I have news. You can't just ignore the fact that if this is a hardcore environment, you have a lot of type A people, and you want to add other people, but you culturally aren't able to do that, you're hiring people that are scared because the environment is not set up for everyone in the organization. You have to make an assessment internally to make sure that's going to work.
So I'm going to start with this simple then. How many of you have gone to work sick? Up high, up high. Yeah. So here you are, right? And you're not alone.
How many of you are sick right now?
Yes. How many of you have a communicable disease right now?
Right.
We were talking about knocking boots earlier, so that's a fair question.
That's
Not
right.
us together, just
No.
generally.
Yes.
But if you're involved in that kind of culture, though, right? So if the people that are involved at the onset of the candidate experience, we've kind of adopted a culture of, hey, this is kind of what it means to work here. And I'm also going to say one of the things that this survey talks about is that we've got this work from home mentality that's allowed to happen maybe much more in organizations over the past couple of years. And so we're finding people saying things like, especially if they're an on-site, primarily on-site worker, and they'll say something like, I'm not feeling great today, but I'll just work from home. Instead, right? Have you heard this? Right? And so you may even do it. So now work from home becomes synonymous with I'm not feeling my best, right? So I'm going to just put the time in because I want to save my time for my cruise after I work in Alaska for the summer to anywhere, right? Yeah, I work at it.
That's good. It's like our own bingo. It's like we created our own but first coffee bingo before we stood up here, before we got on the stage. But I think there's another part of it. Like, how many of us are at home? How many of us are Gen Xers? How many of us were told if you're sick and you have to go to the hospital, make sure the hospital driver calls me to let me know you're not going to be in it? Anybody hear that before? I've heard that before.
Terrible bosses.
Like, it's one of those things where we don't know necessarily because we were treated in a certain way. There had to be a certain level of sick. Like, you had to be so sick you couldn't call in. That's how sick you needed to be to not go to work.
Yeah.
Right? Besides, and this is just, we're talking about sickness and illness. We're not even talking about mental health yet.
No.
We haven't even gotten to that part with the burnout.
And you have, by the way, in this survey, out of the population that they obviously that they surveyed, 75%, like we said, are going to work sick. 61% of those are in the healthcare profession. Yeah, yes, right? 61%. So they're coming to clinics, hospitals, doctors' offices with presenting symptoms. Some of that population purposely have taken either a test incorrectly or have manufactured some story to go behind why the positive came up and are still coming to work because it's not a healthy environment for me to miss work. I'll miss out on potential promotion. I'll miss out on being seen as a team player. And so these definitions play into what you and I and Jackie are dealing with, say, from a talent acquisition standpoint, because these are stories that wind up getting shared online. These are stories that wind up getting shared in these like secret chat rooms. We all know the dark web, right? It's where I get most of my information. Those areas really then are where people are doing their research to say, yeah, they're going to sell you this line of crap at the beginning, but here's what really happens when you're a part of this organization.
That's scary.
Frightening, right?
I don't like that. But how many of y'all are hiring for executives right now? Anyone? Have you seen the people applying? Besides the fact that we know that there's this instant application process, I'm seeing a ton of people from healthcare looking for jobs. A ton of candidates from there, a ton from, that have, that's probably the biggest one that I've seen. The other one has been more of the hospitality space where people are trying to leave and go into the other jobs. But the other thing, and like we have to look at is, like I said, it's like, where are we? Where is the problem broken? We keep saying that recruiting is broken or talent acquisition is broken, but where is it broken? And what's happening at work where people would rather call in sick? I mean, that's the first stage. And then the next stage is I'm burnout. Yeah. And then they'll just not. Yeah.
Well, and you have, those of you, the HRTA thing, we have to get over that. Like, we're in it together. We are in it together. Because there are patterns, and we wind up making decisions based on these patterns. Look, if you've got someone who, gets sick on Mondays and Fridays pretty consistently, right? That's amazing. And I have said things to people like, where are you going on Thursday nights or Sunday nights? And they're like, I'm just home. I'm like, well, then you got to clean your house. Like, that's an HR thing, right? When I'm saying you got to clean your house, John, you can't tell me I have to clean my house. I can when you find yourself sick every Friday and Monday and you want me to believe that you're only going home, right? I actually can, because it's affecting your work performance. And we hired you to do a job that we know you can do. We believe in you. Don't be afraid to have these kinds of conversations with people. You have to. We have to. And by the way, it's not just hospitality. I know that sometimes we have this sort of baseline view of hospitality or retail, like, oh, well, that's the kind of people that you get. That's actually not true. And I wind up dealing with some of these people, I'm going to say things like in the tech space, in banking and finance. Lord have mercy. Any of you ever work in banking and finance? Those people are drunk messes. Yeah, like they are. And so if Fridays it's like, oh, John, I was out last night. We need to talk about that from an HR perspective, because it affects the way people are coming into the organization. They observe these patterns very quickly. It does not take very long to figure out how things get done. Well,
and it's also, we need to make sure that we're getting back to getting to know candidates.
Yes.
right? Because so many recruiters now are learning how to use tools, but they're not learning about people and having these real conversations. Now, I thought the last chat that we heard about was pretty interesting when we were talking about AI and then we're talking about bias, and it's like, oh, ooh, ooh. Guess what? When we didn't use AI, there was a 100% chance that there was bias going into the process.
Mhm.
Now we have a 5% chance that we're going to be a little less biased. Take it.
Yeah.
Take the 5% chance.
Right.
And as you're going in, make sure that you're getting to know candidates, seeing what's making them tick. It's not just about us. That's the other part. Recruiters often think that they win when they get the placement.
Right.
And we're having to measure things differently to see if these tools are working.
Yeah.
We have to see if it's a successful hire. Is it actually working as we go through this process? Are they staying? Are they getting that? Has it been a good hire in that part of the process? So we have to make sure that we're tapping in with people and finding out the information. And we need HR just to make sure we don't get in trouble.
Yeah. Well, and which we do. I mean, like you look at that. I'm forgetting that we have to share mine. You look at that 61% of healthcare workers that are coming to work sick. I'm telling you, if you were to talk to those people individually and say to them, to their entry-level self, would you come to work sick and jeopardize the people that you're caring for? Oh my gosh, never. Right? You can imagine that being the place that they were. What happens that you get to a place where it's okay? That's a human interaction that's necessary. That's not going to be just something you can give them this test and say, I'm going to try to figure out that you're a liar about how you're going to be committed to this profession, including being sick at work when you should be home. That's going to be difficult to do. Something else is driving a change in behavior for them. And that's where the human interaction matters so much, because then we're going to notice patterns. We're going to notice communication that's going on. Honestly, the biggest issue is often facial expression. When I tell someone, or tone, if I tell someone I'm going to be sick today and the response on the other end is, okay, pause, and okay, that's passive aggressive. I'm learning quickly that you're pissed that I'm taking the day off because I'm really sick. And I know my temperature is only 101, but I could probably make it work if I just take some Tylenol. Right? Because now that's all that's required for COVID too. If you don't have fever for 24 hours, you can just come back to work, y'all, lick the desk, do whatever you need to do. It's fine. It's no big issue anymore. Like, this is the kind of mentality that's influencing some of this behavior.
Well, and also set that tone at work, at home, about what the expectation is. I think some of us are just at home, so we don't know. We never were taught how to work at home, and that it's okay to be sick. I mean, you feel extremely guilty. How many of you have worked sick from bed before? I'm not going on camera, but I'm here and I'm listening.
Yes.
You're not giving your best work. They're not getting the best out of you. And hindsight, what's funny is like a couple days later, you don't even remember what you said or what you committed to. And you have to do the whole thing over. Take that time. But then we as leaders need to set the example and take that time as well. What y'all don't know, with the exception of today, is I'm on vacation this week.
I did know that.
You can tell by that I look refreshed.
You look fabulous.
Do I look
Isn't this
fabulous?
How about this outfit? Come on,
I've been
please.
at the coast. Oh, thank you. And I was like, I'm not going online. I actually had a vendor call me. It was like, how's your vacation? And I said, is this an emergency?
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to respond to you until Monday.
Yes.
Blocking starting now.
Yep.
And then they texted me from another number and said, had fun. You like that? They're like, oh, let me try my other number. They didn't believe me. We have to set the example where we can say, this is what this means. I don't expect you to come to work. I don't expect to hear from you. Let me know. I will check in to see how things are going. I won't expect to do these things. But then that also means we have to set up the example of what our expectations are in advance so that when somebody becomes sick, you don't feel like everything's falling apart and you don't know what's going on.
Well, and we have created a culture of, here's another one. Raise your hand if you've worked while you're on vacation. Right?
Shame.
Right?
Shame.
Right. Because, well, I just want to get this done. Or I've had a hard time finding this person and they finally communicated. Or no one else in the company knows how to do payroll but me. Or no, like fill in the blank, right? You're absolutely needed. And so the way that you'll show that is you'll even allow it to interfere with your earned time off, right? And I'm going to stand here and say, I own my own organization. I have a phenomenal crew that work with me at Humoriso. I'm the worst culprit of vacation. I mean, I don't take everything that I should, and I don't not work when I'm on vacation. I do work less, right? My wife will say, oh, instead of 10 hours, you only did 4. This is a breakthrough, right? Like that, and that's awful because I've earned the right in many ways, but I feel guilty for taking it. I'm just being honest. I feel guilty for taking the time because I know that the lives of so many people depend upon my interaction, but I'm honestly not that important. Truth be told, I'm not that important. I can be gone for a few weeks, and she knows this. I can be gone for a few weeks, and that company will work without me.
They've never needed you.
Never.
Actually, they've never needed you. How many of you, raise your hand again, how many of you have been on vacation and worked? How many of you think that your company would completely fall apart if you left and you would not be replaced within 2 weeks?
Yep.
Well, y'all, owner of your own companies,
no.
yes, it would completely fall apart. Absolutely, it would
Not
fall
2
apart.
weeks. I'm more important than that.
2 weeks.
3.
They'll try. They'll say 3 days. It's like, call that person. Who was the silver medalist 3 years ago? Call them. But the thing is, it's like when you think about it from those terms, it seems silly, right?
Yeah.
Take the time before you get burnout and before it turns into something else. But then also see if you can work with the HR to see what the company culture is, to either accept that that's the culture, build out the persona so that the people that you have coming in aren't going to do that, or start making the change that you need to internally to make sure that you have a safe environment. All of this has to do in my book. So I am the VP of TA and DEIB over at Textia. This is the IB part, right? Of inclusion and belonging. It's the fear that makes you say that I'm not enough and I'm only valued on my merit. And it kind of goes back to what some of the other things we were talking about your skills and about your competencies. But you are more than your job. You are more than your job. And so it's when we go in and we start looking at ourselves as only valuable because of that piece, those competencies. But you're a whole person that you're bringing to your organizations. And we want you whole at work, right?
We pay for you to be whole, quite frankly, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I have a question on that because we're talking about the utilization of days off in kind of a corporate, like you have PTO context, but you're mentioning some industries, retail, hospitality, where people don't have paid leave. Can you talk about that a little bit? Whether you think this is like cultural or kind of policy based, and how we
they don't care about people in retail or hospitality. They don't, and so they have to do this overhiring. I mean, they care about the bottom line of what it comes down to, but it's like they're not going to give those things. We're starting to see more of it as we see that the talent pool in those industries are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. We're seeing that they are kicking it up. They're going to have to make that change because it's just not sustainable.
I will also say that you're, in response to that, you have city and state legislation that's going to require, that's pushing change to occur as well. So when I work with an organization that's in restaurant, as an example, in New York City, as an example, who still wants to tell an employee who calls out and is using earned sick time, well, you got to find someone to cover your shift. Boo-boo, that's not what the law says, right? The law says that's your issue. That person's like, yeah, but John, who's going to cover the shift today? Hi, put on an apron, get going, right? That's what we need to do and remind them, because quite frankly, what we wind up doing is burning out managers at these locations, because the managers then have to be all things to the owners of these hospitality groups, and that's not sustainable. And the turnover, quite frankly, at the manager level rivals what's happening at the server and bartender level and busser level. It is the same because we are just a used commodity. Listen, Jackie's right that you are more than just your job, but to be fair, is that kind of the message you deliver in the talent acquisition process?
And what we're talking about, like what you're talking about, those particular industries, when you're on the talent acquisition side, we know we have to hire 2 for every one, right? It can't be just what fits into your schedule right now. You have to hire to have those people that can come in and have the expectation. And what's unfortunate is that we're not sharing that information at the beginning. and saying, this is what's going to happen. This is what the environment is like. This is what our expectations are. But we all know when people are sick, they can't help it.
Right.
They can't help it.
Right. And I mean, this is the fastest, right? We're wrapping up. So sorry. But, for us, I would say the encouragement today is work with your marketing team as well as HR in the messaging, the continuity of the messaging, because it is going to be, in some of your experience in this, you're getting some of the same roles back in your job rec pipeline over and over and over again, because people aren't staying, because they're getting a whiff of what this culture is. And we have more people saying, I don't want to be a part of that. And if I have to be a part of it and I'm selling my soul for it, then I know this isn't going to be long-term either, because at some point I am going to be sick. At some point I am going to need to miss work, and I don't want to be guilty about missing work. And if that's the kind of culture that is there, it's going to be seen regardless of how beautiful of a video you put together about what it means to work here.
I think in closing too, the other part is letting people know the expectation. I think this unlimited PTO has gotten people confused. They don't know when they can take a sick day. They don't know what's a half day. They're not sure what is expected. And letting people know we have unlimited PTO. This is what on average, this is what we think is going to happen, so that people start using it, because they're using unlimited PTO as sick time. And we can't regulate or check from an HR perspective if they are sick every Thursday and Monday. We can't tell. And so give people those options so that we can do a better analysis, and that we can give all of our employees what they need and set those expectations in advance, so that you don't have people taking advantage of the system, but that they also feel like they have the space to take the time that they need.
This is Buffer's Coffee. We're usually on every Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Thank you all for being here with us today.